Welcome to the Prodigal and the Priest podcast, a podcast about faith, sports, and two friends from different cultures. Here are your hosts, Joey Scansella and Father Paul Bechter.
Father Paul.
What's up, Joey? How are you doing, man?
Doing
what
well.
are you doing right now?
I'm trying.
Are you troubleshooting
trying
something?
to get our picture on the screen, but yeah, I had to charge the iPad and.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So.
iPads are kind of a mystery world to me. Like I've only had to use them a couple times, mostly for communication stuff and learning how to do some of that. Audio-visual technician.
Ba-boom.
But they're kind of, I don't know, I don't want to take this in too weird of a direction, but they're weird devices. They're like not a computer, but not a phone.
Wow.
Super profound. Okay, let's
He's
get
a
on
prophet.
Let's get on to something.
All right.
Meaningful.
Now that I've done those things, I can resume my host duties. Welcome to Prodigal, the Priest, and me. Today is our question edition, and before we get into it, though, I hear you had some comments back about the pizza question.
Yeah. Lot of controversy generated by the pizza discussion.
I know people are like, you didn't mention E Fratelli's, you didn't mention
E Fratelli's a cut above.
Yeah, exactly.
Not in the
or what was the
conversation.
other one? Cavalli? No, not Cavalli's.
CC's.
No, they didn't mention CC's.
Little Caesars.
Yeah, the 2 for $5 deal.
That's a great deal.
That's a great deal, but we were talking to, and then you had a legit person reach out to you about pizza, right?
I did.
Nice.
So I went and spent some time with my family.
Yeah.
Yeah. And some of my family are listeners, and they ordered Domino's Pizza to welcome me there for Thanksgiving, having
That's
heard it was my
amazing.
favorite kind of pizza in this like fast food pizza category.
Domino's Pizza.
And I was overjoyed. It was so delightful.
That's
Thank you for
amazing.
doing that. It was definitely the thought that counted. Because
We love 'em.
so let me be clear on the Domino's thing, right? I was saying I think of Domino's first.
Right.
I would probably order Domino's before I would order Pizza Hut or the others. I think because I like it, but mostly because I think of it first.
Mm.
And so it's not to take us down that path again, but I'm not making the kind of claim that like I will only eat Domino's and not Pizza Hut
Right.
or Papa John's.
Right.
Um,
Garlic sauce.
I think it's a much softer claim. Yeah. So anyway, lots of
Lots of
controversy.
pizza.
I heard from people who were very grateful that I separated off like pizza in Italy as a different thing.
Absolutely. You can't. I mean,
Completely different
apples and
debate.
oranges.
Yeah.
Seriously. So,
Totally different.
really, and in a sense, like Texas to the Northeast or the Northeast to the, Northwest or like it's just like
Completely different cultures.
when I was on Net Ministries traveling around for retreats. I remember we were on one retreat in Cincinnati, Ohio. They're like, you want barbecue for dinner? And we're all like, yeah, barbecue sounds good. And I'm a kid from New Jersey, but I still think, when I think barbecue, I think like Texas barbecue type stuff. They pull out a crock pot of Sloppy Joes.
Oh.
That's barbecue in like
Whoa,
Cincinnati.
whoa.
Yeah, I was like, wow, what a tangled web we weave when at first. So I was just like, or it's just interesting, the cultural aspect of different places. Wisconsin, same thing, retreats. They're like, oh, do you need, if you need water, here's the bubbler. Bubbler is a water fountain.
Weird.
Yeah. Or like, do you call it soda, pop, Coke?
I call it soda.
Okay.
I kind
me
of wish
too.
I called it Coke, like a real Texan.
Now that you have the mustache?
Yeah, I got the stash now.
Yeah.
Cowboy hat is ready to come out when it gets warm again.
Wait, so you can't do, because of the PPE, you can't do handlebars into the stash. Like you can't do,
I can't connect sideburns and stash.
because that breaks the seal.
Yeah.
Oh,
I could have
man.
long sideburns and the stash. I could have long sideburns and a sort of semi handlebar
You could soul patch it, though.
I could soul patch it as well.
Oh, man.
These were all on the chart of approved facial hairstyles with the green tick next to each of them.
Oh, gosh.
But yeah, anything that would connect up by the mustache region,
Yeah.
or would go onto the chin area.
Got it. All right, well, let's get into some real questions.
Yeah.
Sound good?
Let's do it.
All right. So I got a bunch from one of our avid listeners. Every time she goes on a road trip, she sends me like 10 questions. So I'll do a few of hers as well. Mary Chapman. Shout out to Mary Chapman. Thanks for listening. But she asked a few serious ones and a few lighthearted ones. So I want to do one of her lighthearted ones. In your opinion, who's the most underrated saint? I just saw you freak out a little bit with that question.
Yeah, I'd kind of stopped paying attention, and then I was like...
And then you're like, oh, he asked me a question. So most underrated saint.
Most underrated saint.
Oh, gosh, so many of them.
Yeah.
I mean...
I always get tied up in knots trying to come up with, like... Trying to power rank stuff like this. Most underrated saint.
I'll toss out one who I don't think gets as much credit. I'm going to go like a Saint Monica. Because...
She gets a lot of credit, though.
Does she?
For those who know, but maybe that's what underrating is.
Yeah. I'm like, so many people would say, okay, I see tons of like St. Augustine's for, confirmations or things like that. Like, and people just know the story, St. Augustine and the radical conversion and all that. But for those who don't know the mother behind that, who prayed for her son's conversion, I don't know. I think there's some underrated aspects there. I think also the story of Saint Perpetua and Saint Felicity.
I like that story. Yeah.
I mean,
as far as liking martyrdom.
Yeah, I was like, wow, you like them being tossed, like sewn on their backs were like the skins of other animals to make like the
it's a beautiful story.
The lions tear them apart more in the but I think saints like that are hugely underrated. I love the story of Saint Perpetua and Saint Felicity.
The early the martyrs of the canon. So Perpetua and Felicity are in the Roman canon, Eucharistic Prayer 1, ancient list of early saints, early martyrs, really.
Right.
Apostles and martyrs. And all the apostles were martyred except John anyway, so. But,
yeah, John weak.
Yeah. Just
followed Jesus all the way to the cross.
They tried to martyr him, and then they exiled him. But, I've got a thought. Saint Polycarp.
Ah.
The martyrdom of Polycarp. You've inspired me with the Perpetua and Felicity thing.
Nice.
So I'm going like early.
Yeah.
Early.
Wait, it's not Ignatius Polycarp, is it?
No. Ignatius is different, but Ignatius of Antioch was my second underrated saint I was going to give.
Okay.
Because both of them both of them, how to say it? I don't know what I'm trying to say. They both have very profound martyrdom stories.
Yeah.
From the earliest days of the church.
Right.
And, yeah, pretty awesome. Also, Saint Irenaeus, I think very underrated.
Yeah.
Extremely important theologian. Very funny.
Yeah.
Most people don't know. But, like, he mocked different forms of Gnosticism in his writings against heresies.
Yeah.
And we only have access to most of those writings in like Victorian style English because they haven't been retranslated in a long time.
Right.
So they're kind of hard to sink your teeth into, but they're actually really funny and really profound. And he is extremely important for the whole theological tradition coming after him.
Yeah.
And has a connection with Texas.
I'm going to go with an obscure one, JP2. I'm just kidding. What about, though, a few others? I'll just toss out for consideration. Great question, by the way. Great, fun question.
Great question.
I do think if you're not Peter, John, or James, you kind of get like the short end of the stick.
Andrew. We had Andrew
earlier
this week.
Most people can't name the 12 apostles. Like, how would you like to be James the Less? Or no one knows anything about... I just think those saints, hugely underrated. Also, my parish growing up was St. Barnabas. And I think Barnabas is a very underrated saint. And so, just like, yeah, I think those saints, the Ugandan martyrs, I mean, there's so many, the North American martyrs, Blessed Jose Sanchez del Rio, like the 6-year-old or who like gave his life. You remember? No? No? Okay.
I was trying to play along, but yeah.
Dominic Savio.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, there's so many. But I put Perpetua and Felicity up there.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to stick with that. Or like St. Monica in some aspects.
Yeah, I think St. Monica is less underrated.
Because why? There's churches named St. Monica?
Yeah, and a lot of mothers know about St. Monica and rate her very highly.
Yeah. But those are like a lot of very Catholic moms.
True.
So, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Good question. Okay.
Right.
Here's a legit one. During Christmas, we hear the genealogy of Jesus read. How does this actually work, though? I've heard the genealogy is passed down through the mother's side, as in Mary was of the tribe of Levi, which made Jesus a priest. However, we hear that Joseph is the son of David. So is the lineage passed down through the father, like in the Western sense? How do we understand this?
I want to say that in Matthew's genealogy, and I might have it reversed, but in Matthew's one, it's through the mother, and in Luke's one, it's through the father. I know that one of them begins with Jesus and goes all the way back, and then one of them starts at the beginning and goes all the way up to the front. But I always thought that was that it was both for Jesus, even though Joseph is adopted father, but like that there's actually a meaning to adoption when it comes to sort of rights in the family and stuff, and that like his inheritance of the line of David.
I was going to say David is the emphasis, right?
Yeah, Davidic.
Yeah.
Davidic kingship. Yeah, I thought it was through both in this.
You're the Bible person, so I think we're coming
Bible
to you.
Guy. Yeah, questions like this sometimes I just haven't really looked into that much, and then I get all hesitant trying to like even give, because I don't want to give a bad opinion and be like, well, the Bible guy said this. But I'm also probably not going to look into it anytime soon.
So you go with Davidic. I don't know.
Great question, though.
Great question.
Sorry, I'm also distracted by trying to like stroke my beard as I'm thinking.
And I can hear the sandpaper in the mic.
I'm trying so hard to get a close shave, and it's thick, man.
We should pose the question to our listeners, like who's the best like straight razor, barber to go to?
Ooh, that is a good question.
That would be good. So listeners, there you go. All right. Thor asks, I'm sure you've heard of the term spiritual battle or spiritual warfare. I have a few questions about this. First, just your understanding of spiritual warfare and maybe some interesting things about it from either your own life, or would you be willing to share from the lives of the saints? Second is, I'm wondering how this affects your daily life and some ways or things that you use to overcome or win in a spiritual battle. Also, Joey, if you can recall how it changed before and after you were married or after children, as well, Father Paul, how it changed before or after you entered seminary during your time in Italy and now as a parish priest. So general comments on spiritual warfare, how that was personally for our lives or the lives of the saints. And so, it's a great topic. I think it's kind of a highly debated topic, some in the sense that I know when I was at Franciscan, for example, I feel like you encountered some people that were like, oh, I stubbed my toe, spiritual warfare, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It kind of, we've talked about it before with Mary or different devotions or things like that, right? That it's like you can take these things and it can lead you closer to Christ and take it in an appropriate way, or it can become this obsession and
Superstition.
superstition. And
It can
so
get to that level.
I know it's interesting within the terms of, like he asked me about, before and after married. Yeah, like huge, I'd say the biggest spiritual like warfare or temptation is like to always be looking back and to be like, oh man, it was so much better when I was engaged. It was so much better when I was single or I had this freedom or without children and this. Like the biggest spiritual warfare that I think plagues fathers and families is always thinking it was better when this, and so therefore I'm not happy now and just want to separate and break up the family. We're always living one step behind to say, oh, if I only had it back without kids. It was so peaceful. It was so great. I had my own time. Oh, but if I only had it back to when we were engaged, I had this or that. Oh, well, if I'm single, I only had that. Like it's me, I. Like the spiritual warfare of, I just think the devil wants to isolate us and say, you're not happy. You don't have enough. It's not enough. You want more, So sharing a little bit about that, but what about you as, going through seminary, priesthood, all of that?
Yeah. Well, first, just want to affirm your share right there.
Oh, thank you.
Good share, man.
Thank you.
And
if you had a switch, you would play
I'd play some applause or some kind of drop, but I don't. I can just one hand clap. Or sandpaper
just
sound.
Scratch.
No, but that's a good share first because it's something personal that I think will resonate with other fathers. But also you put your finger on, I think, an important dimension of spiritual warfare just by giving that example in a really clear way that it's when we hear the word spiritual warfare, we probably shouldn't be thinking of angels and demons around every corner battling in this way. I don't know, maybe that's what's going on, but what it looks like to us is a slight temptation,
right,
that escalates or that spirals, downhill,
right,
and becomes a bigger dissatisfaction with my life,
right,
and then becomes a mild despair and a sense of give up or something. When we talk about spiritual warfare, that's really what we're talking about. That kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Movements of grace, and whether or not I accept them or reject them,
right,
and temptations and what I do with those. Sometimes people get weird, crazy, blasphemous thoughts when they go up to receive the Eucharist or when they're in the pews. I've had people tell me that before, and they're freaked out by it. They're like, I don't want this. Is this sinful? I don't know. And it's that I think is a good example of spiritual warfare. That's something that's probably not coming from you.
Right.
You don't seem to have any control over whether or not that thought enters your mind. But what do you do with that?
Right.
And the basic response is, reject it, and try and think about something else. And if rejecting it doesn't seem to get rid of it, then ignore it.
Yeah.
There's certain types of temptations or thoughts that when you engage with them, by trying to reject them, you actually make them stronger.
Yeah. And
so the appropriate thing from a spiritual warfare perspective is to learn to allow that thought to pass, and not to be disturbed by it. And I think that example applies to all sorts of different things.
Yeah.
The devil's end game is to drive us into despair. Despair of God's mercy, despair that God could ever heal us or would ever want to rescue us from whatever we're struggling with. That's the end game, is to get us into despair. And I'm sure he's got tons of tools at his disposal.
Right.
But our response is always the same. It's to, I don't know, use that against him. Okay, so you get a temptation, right, to do something. Or you have a bad thought enter your mind. or you just find that there is this, you've slid without realizing it into this kind of malaise. Like you were saying, looking back or something like that. If you can take any of those things and turn them into an occasion of like, well, now I'm going to turn to Christ and rededicate my life to him. Like, you're thwarting the devil right there.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're turning that tactic against him. That's effective warfare. We're not going to outsmart him, but if we turn to Christ every chance we get, like, that's I mean, you can't win.
Right.
And so, I don't know. I think it's important to focus on like the really mundane parts of this, because I think that's most people's experience.
Right. And what you're, just to articulate though, what you're kind of getting at is because most people hear spiritual warfare and they think, oh, like Exorcist of Emily Rose.
Yeah.
Right. Like they think
or
these like
apocalyptic visions.
Right.
Or,
They think these huge things instead of.
Yeah. Or stories from like the lives of the saints, like St. John Vianney, for instance, being tormented by these noises and stuff.
Or Padre Pio didn't.
Yeah, Padre Pio. All sorts
physically
of different stories,
fighting like
about
demons,
them, like, battling devils, and it's like, okay, maybe that doesn't seem to be happening to most people.
Right.
So like, saints do extraordinary things, but for most of us, that's not what it looks like.
Right.
Yeah, it's important to recognize like how mundane and boring the devil is. Like, sin isn't interesting.
Right.
And temptations to sin are not interesting. They're boring. Because if we only think of spiritual warfare as something like flashy, we're either going to be drawn to it in this weird kind of like vain curiosity kind of way, that some people can get drawn to the occult.
Right.
Drawn to it in that way, or we're going to think that it doesn't apply to us.
Right.
And it's really like, no, it does apply, but it's a matter of like being able to keep custody of your thoughts and of your actions.
Yeah.
Not being able to control your thoughts, but your reaction to them.
Right.
I hope that makes sense without making it sound too weird. Like,
no, it makes total sense. And I love that point you made about, it's in those kind of like simple things. And I look at it and I remember when, just small tangent, The Passion of the Christ came out, the movie.
Yeah.
They asked Mel Gibson, I just distinctly remember this in my mind, them asking him about why he chose the way the devil looks. It's kind of this like neutral and like kind of, he said it kind of wanted to be like alluring, kind of,
sinister,
but
not
kind
flashy.
of like, yeah. And he's like, that's what I think we experience on a daily thing. If you saw this huge, gnarly, disgusting thing, you would probably run from it on a daily basis. But it's in these subtle, like,
lies.
small lies, compromising things, or the spiritual battle, of being like, so.
No, that's a really good point. And I do actually have a story from my own life to illustrate that a little bit. So like, I mean, I haven't had particularly flashy moments of spiritual warfare in my life, but I do know that on some of the retreats I've made, there have been moments when I woke up terrified for no reason. And I never have nightmares. I sleep pretty well. I like to sleep. But I woke up just absolutely terrified. And it was all I could do to like grab my rosary and start praying. And, the fear eventually went away. I don't know if it was just that like I had slept weirdly, or if it was, there's always natural mixed in quite a bit with this. But what I did realize looking back and seeing a pattern in some of this was that, okay, so it seems like the devil's tactics, if he's got us in a state of sin, for instance, why bother revealing yourself? He's got us right where he wants us. Right. If he's got us, if we're struggling against that, then his tactic seems to be to get us to despair that we're ever going to be free.
Yeah.
If we're living a life of grace and not habitually struggling with mortal sin, like if we've conquered that far along the spiritual life, then it seems like there are, I don't know, maybe some moments where he will reveal himself in a bit stronger way.
Yeah.
But it's because he's losing power. It's basically a scare tactic. Those moments on retreat when I would wake up terrified and, like have to pray to calm down and stuff like that, those were always moments kind of on the eve of something big in my spiritual life. There weren't a ton of them, but there were enough to notice a pattern. And it makes sense to me that like the devil wouldn't want to come out of hiding until the last possible moment, because once he did and once you rejected him, what else does he have? If he's tried to scare you out in the open and you've turned to Christ anyway, what else does he have?
Right.
And his end game is to get us to fall into despair. So it's better to lie hidden and just work through these subtle lies, work through a culture which promotes these subtle half-truths and lies as the normal way to live, and to lock us into habits of sin that are chains, and to make us think that we can never be free.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's how I see spiritual warfare.
Yeah. I think it's great.
I think it's much better to focus on the mundane and the everyday when you're thinking about spiritual warfare.
Thor, great question.
Yeah,
Appreciate
God
it.
of Thunder. Way to go.
We love your name. I think we answered a question for Thor maybe early on. So thank you for still listening.
Yeah.
It shows that.
Thank you for your courage, Thor, to use your name.
So let's end a lighthearted note. Describe the perfect sandwich.
Oh, I do love sandwiches.
Really?
I do, actually. I've been made fun of for a particular love of sandwiches.
By me?
No, not by
Oh, okay. I was like, I didn't know I did that. Then I'll let you start.
When I was in Italy, I'm going to give a lot of background before I even answer. But when I was in Italy, sometimes I would just long for a sandwich. You could get really good sandwiches there.
Right.
But they also have a different approach, which is just like bread and an ingredient.
Because their bread is so good.
And all their ingredients are so good.
Right.
So if you're getting like, you could get a just fresh mozzarella on bread.
And it's like...
And that would be a sandwich.
Yeah,
or
exactly.
just prosciutto.
Yeah.
Or salami or something.
Right.
And it would be an amazing sandwich. But we don't have that quality of ingredients here.
Exactly.
Okay. My ideal sandwich.
Perfect, I think was the word.
Perfect.
Describe the perfect
Toasted
sandwich.
sourdough bread.
I
like sourdough. I liked it before it was cool. Toasted sourdough bread with a little bit of butter and then a little bit of mayonnaise.
Okay.
Just enough butter to
What
to
does the butter do?
Basically the same thing as the mayonnaise. I just feel like without the butter it wouldn't be complete. Then Coleman's English mustard, which is mustard that's like horseradish mustard.
Like the stone ground, right?
No. More so. It's like wasabi, basically.
Oh, okay.
It's horseradish. It's British. Coleman's
Sounds intense.
I love it.
Make your eyes water a little bit.
If you put too much on it. It tastes like wasabi, basically.
Okay.
So Coleman's English mustard, healthy amount. Pickles. There must be dill pickles, not sweet pickles.
Okay.
Sweet pickles should be banished from polite society.
Except on burgers, bread and butter pickles.
Only dill.
Okay, we can debate that another time.
Some sharp white cheese of
You've
some sort.
really thought about this before. Like we did not pre-screen these questions.
Yeah, we did not. This is a much more complete answer than I've given to any theological question. Or like what saint I like the most.
Yeah. Sharp cheese.
Sharp white cheddar cheese.
Okay.
Approaching Parmesan in its level of sharpness.
Okay.
And cold leftover steak sliced. So a steak sandwich is basically what I've described, a leftover steak sandwich.
But not roast beef.
No, not roast beef.
Okay.
Leftover steak. I'm describing something from my childhood. Steak was hard to get in Bermuda. Like we could eat other meats much more affordably. That's not a word.
Yeah. Sure.
Whatever. Economically.
Mm-hmm.
But there aren't like beef cows in Bermuda. You have to ship it in, and anyway.
Yeah.
So we wouldn't have steak a ton, but having like the leftover steak as a steak sandwich in the manner I've described, I think is the greatest sandwich. It's the perfect sandwich.
See, in me, perfect sandwich, it's all about the bread. Like the crusty bread on the outside, the softness on the inside. I just think to this one little deli in my town in Jersey.
In your little town in southern Italy. On the Adriatic coast.
Richard's Deli. And their bread, you could put anything on it. That's where I'm like going all Italian. Now, granted, I'm going to go real Italian on it, and like the ideal perfect sandwich is like chicken parmesan on this bread. You know,
to make this worth your while.
Yeah, exactly. But really, I'm very much that Italian sense of if it is the perfect bread, that's just the perfect sandwich. You could put roast beef. You can make it an Italian sandwich. You can do steak. You can do roast beef. You can do turkey. You can do, meatball sandwich.
Quick hit. Tuna fish, yes or no?
Like do I like it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I like tuna
I'm
fish.
strongly in favor of tuna fish sandwiches.
I like tuna fish.
Okay.
Please tell me you don't put that Coleman's mustard in tuna fish, though. I know some people that make tuna fish with like mustard instead. Mustard and almonds.
I don't like sweet tuna fish.
Okay.
So
yeah.
I would go with kind of the bitter, what is that mustard taste? With like a mustard taste over sweet. But I don't think that's the ideal tuna fish sandwich.
So if you need a sandwich, though, and you can't make it, you're driving around somewhere, you're about to go do an anointing, you gotta get a quick sandwich in. Where do you go around here?
I'm a Panera guy.
Dude,
chicken
Jersey
sandwich
Mike's, come on.
Panera. Jersey Mike's is all right.
All right.
See,
they got the closest bread aspect to me. I feel like if you get it when it's freshly baked, their bread there, the crunchy on the outside, soft on the inside, I'm big on that. I don't get that at Panera as much.
I'll go to Schwatzky's as well. I'm like one of the few keeping it in business. All right, we're probably done.
All right. People are like,
what?
The pizza.
We're going to talk about our favorite cereal soon.
Hey.
I don't like cereal. We can't have that discussion.
My son, Dom, loves cereal, though, so I can bring my A game on the cereal. So we thank you so much for listening, supporting the show. Reach out to us with any questions. Joey Scansella, Father Paul Bechter. Take care.
God bless.